Hi, my name is Trainmaster04, and in this product review, I'll be reviewing Lionel's latest release of the massive Union Pacific Veranda turbine and the unique World War II fighter pilot themed paint scheme. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Union Pacific 4014, do you read me? Over. Roger that. Union Pacific 4014, I copy that. Over. Start up and stand by. Over. Yes, sir. Start up and stand by. Out.
Instead of starting this video off with a history lesson, I'm going to jump right into the actual details of the model. But if you would like to see some history on the actual Union Pacific Veranda turbine, go and check out my other UP Veranda turbine video I did a few years back and come back to this video. Okay, now that you're back, let's go ahead and get into this video. This model was last released in Lionel's 2021 Volume 1 catalog and has become quite a fan favorite amongst modelers in the What If paint scheme amongst all of the other various What If paint schemes Lionel has come out with amongst the Verandas. For shipping, this model soon started showing up around September of 2021. Next, for measurements, this model has a combined length, locomotive, and auxiliary fuel tender of 30 inches, which means this model has a minimum curve radius of 0.72, so definitely not a small locomotive. Under the hood, this model is equipped with 2 flywheel-driven motors and is also equipped with 2 fan-driven smoke units, one being located in the middle for the main turbine exhaust and the second one for the diesel engine towards the rear. For sound systems, this locomotive is equipped with Lionel's latest Rail Sounds operating system and also a subwoofer located in the auxiliary fuel tender. Now, when you do go and program this locomotive, there are various arrays of switches located both in the locomotive and auxiliary fuel tender that you'll need to make sure are in sync with each other. So when you program it, make sure both the engine and tender are in program the locomotive into your command system, and then put it back into run, so that both units can operate seamlessly together. For operating system, this locomotive is equipped with Lionel's Legacy command system, which means you can operate this locomotive with Lionel's Legacy, TMCC, Bluetooth, or even conventional. With all of the model's stats and facts taken care of, let's go ahead, take a closer look, and see what all the wonderful details this model has to offer. Starting up front at the locomotive, here you can see we have a nice die-cast metal pilot with 2 molded-in steps, 2 molded-in grab irons, and in the center, a molded-in coupling cup bar. In the center, we also have a nice-looking O-gauge electrocoupler, which can be thrown by using either Lionel's Legacy, TMCC, or Bluetooth command control systems. Looking on up from the pilot, and instantly you are greeted with a mouth of teeth, in this case a shark's mouth reminiscent to World War II Spitfires, but also a few other details, such as in the center 2 separately applied grab irons, a molded-in door leading into the cab of the locomotive itself, 2 blanked out number boards, which on other variations would actually have illuminated number boards behind it, 2 reverse lights which do come on when the locomotive's in reverse, a center headlight which goes off when the locomotive's also in reverse, and a center Mars light, which flashes when the locomotive's in motion, idle, or set into the forward direction, but changes red when put into reverse. Moving over to the engineer side of the locomotive, starting at the bottom, here you can see we have the first set of powered trucks on this model, which is nicely painted in a pretty stunning silver paint scheme and is also nicely detailed with some molded-in brake rigging and also spring rigging. Moving on up, here you can see we have an air compressor tank, various molded-in access points for internal components, and also the humongous cab itself. For artwork, you can see the gaping shark tooth mouth continues and wraps around the side of the nose and is even more menacing with the accompanying eyes on either side of the cab. However, since this is based off of say a World War II bomber or even Spitfires, it is also dubbed with a World War II themed caricature, in this case, the Bluebell. For other details, you can see on the side we have the cab itself, which has multiple windows with clear plastic inserts that also wraps around towards the front, some more grab irons on top of the nose, which is nicely painted in a dark black, and inside the cab itself it has various controls such as the main power control panel on the back and 3 crew figures. Yes, you did hear me right, there are 3 crew figures, which is prototypical to operate a Veranda turbine. And finally, here you can see towards the back of the cab and right next to the caricature is the beginning of what makes this locomotive a veranda, and that is the veranda catwalk. Continuing down the locomotive, here in the middle, we have a nice U.S. Army script along the side of it, as well as molded-in doors leading into the turbine itself. Now, one reason why that the verandas were designed this, or I should say later verandas were designed like this, was so that crews wouldn't be deafened by the extremely loud machinery inside the locomotive. So, as a result, Union Pacific redesigned the verandas to have this outside walkway instead of having crews to walk inside the locomotive where sound would be reverberated from the walls. They can then access it a lot easier and also with more comfort from the outside. For other details, you can see the walkway continues along the side of the locomotive with nice looking handrails and 2 access points to it from the left and from the right. Underneath the walkway itself, you can see there are more molded in hatches, various accessories, and access points for electrical work, separately applied pipework underneath them, 2 separately applied ladders, and then also 2 more powered trucks. And finally, in the center, here we have the main center weight for the verandas. What used to be a fuel tank is now just a lead weight for these locomotives. As fuel was consumed by the locomotives themselves, the center weight would deplenish and wheel slip would increase. So, as a result, Union Pacific, in their later models and older models, updated them with a center weight that is permanent. Coming to the end of the locomotive, here you can see on the right-hand side, the veranda walkway comes to an abrupt end towards this confusing enclosed area of the locomotive with a little window right by it. Now, if you're interested in the history of this locomotive, you would know that this area is the enclosure for the diesel engine to power the locomotive itself. This would be used for shunting the locomotive through yards or even starting it up at slow speeds. For other details, here you can see we have a molded-in conduit cover, 1941 scripted on the side of the locomotive, various molded-in hatches, a ladder leading up to the rear platform with 2 grab irons, and then finally at the bottom, the last powered truck. Looking at the back of the locomotive, starting at the bottom, here you can see we have the rear electrocoupler, which also can be thrown by using Lionel's Legacy TeamCC or Bluetooth command control system. And one interesting feature about this locomotive is the locomotive itself can be isolated from the fuel tender if wanted. And that's one reason why Lionel went ahead and put an electrocoupler here, is so that instead of using the auxiliary fuel tender, you can just use the main unit. But besides that, there are also various other details, such as a nice looking platform with various handrails, separately applied chain, and also a separately applied brake wheel. On the back panel itself, here you can see we have the locomotive's reverse light, a central door leading into the diesel locomotive room, a ladder leading up to the top part of the locomotive, and also various rivet detailing around the doorway. On top of the locomotive, here you can see we have 2 molded-in horns alongside 2 molded-in grab irons on top of the cab, some form of a toolbox or electrical component, various grills that are molded into the body, and also a separately applied hose or conduit going into the locomotive as well. Various other parts such as molded-in rivets and other various components that make this locomotive what it is, and finally, an enormous exhaust vent. This exhaust vent is actually the vent for the main turbine. On this model itself, it is equipped with 2 fan-driven smoke units, one for the main turbine and also one for the main diesel generator. In this case, the exhaust vent for this and for the smoke unit for this locomotive, you just simply pour the smoke fluid directly down the vent. I would suggest putting at least 2 more extra drops than what you are normally used to, since the smoke fluid does have to travel a good distance in order to get to the smoke unit itself. One other interesting feature about this model is that the locomotive will automatically turn on the turbine exhaust when the locomotive is put at 15 miles per hour, which was prototypical for the real veranda turbine. Continuing down the locomotive, and as you can see, there is yet even more details to be shown, such as separately applied grab irons, pipework, and also various molded-in hatches, toolboxes, and other electrical components required for this locomotive. But there is one detail that is pretty well hidden that is really, really nice in the operation side of this locomotive, and that is hidden underneath this hatch. As you can see, that little detail lifts up and is held by 4 magnets, and it reveals all of the necessary switches to run this locomotive, such as the run program switch, the on and off switches for various couplers, sounds, and smoke units, and also the on and off switch for the Bluetooth control. Now, the reason why there are so many switches on this model is because, as I stated earlier, the locomotive can technically be isolated from the tender and can operate it just fine. So, in order to pair or isolate the locomotive from the tender, you have to set the locomotive and tender together with the various switches, such as turning off the rear electrocoupler as shown earlier, so that when you throw the rear electrocoupler, it doesn't accidentally disconnect itself from the tender, but instead the tender's electrocoupler does, and so on. Now, to cover up all the switches, you simply just replace the cover. And finally, coming to the end of the locomotive, as you can see, there is still a little bit more detail to be shown, such as the diesel prime mover's exhaust vent, which is equipped with a fan-driven smoke unit. And in order to fill the smoke unit with smoke fluid, you just simply pour it directly down the stack. Various other details include molded-in rivet detailing for this patchwork to access the unit itself, various separately applied pipework, which in this case is pipework that would lead to the auxiliary fuel tender to connect to, and also a few other conduit sections and various molded-in hooks. Taking a quick look at the fireman's side of the locomotive, and as you can see, it is pretty much identical compared to the engineer's side, with a few minute differences here and there. With the locomotive taken care of, let us now move over to the tender. Starting at the bottom, here you can see we have a normal coupler which can be thrown manually, and also 2 separately applied ladders leading up to the main deck. Also, there are separately applied pipework leading into the tender tank itself, 2 ladders leading up to the main top deck, and also a grab iron with a brake wheel underneath it. Moving over to the engineer's side of the tender, and as you can see, it has a nice curved feature to it with various molded-in details along the bottom, such as rivets, a separately applied air tank, molded-in chains, and also nice graphics, such as a white and blue striped flag, which does curl around to the back of the tender, numbers, in this case 33560, and VT for Veranda turbine number 1941. And at the bottom here you can see we have 2 sets of 6-wheel trucks, which are also nicely detailed with brake rigging and journal boxes. Looking at the back of the tender, at the bottom here you can see we have yet another coupler, making it a total of 4 couplers on this model. In this case, this one is an electrocoupler, which too can be thrown by using Lionel's Legacy, TMCC, or Bluetooth command control. Now, as I stated earlier on, a few other times, this locomotive and tender can be isolated from each other. So, on this model itself, there are multiple switches located underneath on the frame, such as the run program switch, and also, more importantly, an activation and deactivation switch for this coupler itself. So, if you wanted to deactivate this coupler, you can via the switch underneath. But besides that, there are more details to be shown, such as 2 more separately applied ladders leading up to this rear deck, a coupler cup bar which is also separately applied, 2 more ladders leading up to the main deck, grab irons, continuation of that unique blue and white striped flagging, some sort of patch at the bottom with molded-in rivet detailing, and finally up top center, the rear backup light, which is nicely detailed with a molded-in casing. On top of the tender, here you can see we have a ton of separately applied grab irons that go around the perimeter of a nice die-cast metal platform, which does have molded-in safety tread and also 2 hatches, one for the main fuel and the other for probably some form of other equipment. With the locomotive and tender covered, let's go ahead and fire up this beast and go over all the sound features.
This is the dispatcher. Start up and hold. Over. Okay, let's get to work. Out.
First up, here are the 5 different horns. finally, since this is a military-themed locomotive, Lionel went ahead and put a air raid siren for the last horn. Next, here is the bell. Here is the RPM up and down sounds. Here is the fuel fill-up sound.
Fill it up! My fuel's full. Out.
And finally, here is a sampling of both the crew and tower comm chatter.
Dispatcher, we're ready. Is it okay to pull? Over. Please stand by. Out. I got a lot of tonnage today. Better punch in some slack before we start out. Yeah, I'm over here on the crane at 4. My fuel's full. Out.
Let me know as soon as 724 gets by. We ought to have a little time to do something. All right, though. We'll call you right behind 724 then.
Dispatcher, am I cleared to the outbound? Over. You're good outbound. Dispatcher out.
Alrighty, I got some cars hooked up behind the tender. We've been given the green signal, so let's take this land shark for a spin around the layout.
dispatcher. Going to sign the register book. Out.
That about wraps up this product review, but before I go, let me go ahead and answer the two questions that I normally ask around this time in the video, and they are, what is the original MSRP price for this model, and also what is my personal opinion on it? Well, to start off, the original MSRP price for this beautiful Veranda is right at $1,650. Now, this model has become quite a fan favorite amongst modelers, and Lionel also did not get very many pre-orders of them. So there are a few amount of them with a high demand. And if you have been in an economics class, you would know that would mean high prices. So if you do find one of these models, I wouldn't be surprised if you found one on eBay or even on trains.com in the upper 17s to even 2,000 ranges, since one, these models are well done, and also because they are quite rare. Moving over to the second question, which is, what is my personal opinion on this model? After reviewing the original Team CC Veranda turbine and now having a modern comparison next to it, I can confidently say that Lionel did a fantastic job on reproducing an iconic locomotive in both model and prototype form. Lionel really did a good job with getting a little creative in the sense that these locomotives did run during World War II, so in a what-if paint scheme, why wouldn't it be a U.S. Army version? Lionel did a stunning job with the artwork design, giving it a really good feel of a World War II era Spitfire that was painted up with the shark nose detail. For features, Lionel, I am so happy that you kept with the die-cast body. As you can hear, it is solid. This model is extremely heavy and is probably even heavier than a big boy, and is also probably the heaviest model Lionel has ever produced, since 90% of it is all die-cast metal. The details, yes, are a little bit on the slim side since most of them are molded in, but I would say that is a good trade-off to weight comparison. It's not very often that you would find a semi-diesel locomotive that is die-cast metal, and more times than not, it would be plastic. So Lionel, good job on this one, and hopefully this trend will continue with even more better updated Verandas and maybe even a 3-unit turbine. That's it for this product review, but before you go, I just want to say thank you very much for clicking on this video and also watching it to the very end. It takes me a long time to produce this type of quality content for you all to enjoy, so I do greatly appreciate your support. Now, if you'd like to support my channel even further, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel, as that would allow you to no longer miss any of my future videos. And also, while you're at it, go ahead and click that like button, because that lets me know that you actually enjoy this type of content, and also lets YouTube know that this type of content is actually worth something. But anyway, my name is Trainmaster04, and I'll be seeing you next time.
See you later, dispatcher.